Hello and welcome to Leather Crafting the Madam K Way with me, Madam K. Today I'm going to try to do a video from start to finish of the steps and tutorial for making one of my Doctor Who TARDIS notebooks. So what I have here is my leather that I've already cut 11 inches by 7.5 inches to fit two 5x7 notebooks. I have some of my tools out, so I have some EcoFlow Easy Carve. I just started using this. It's pretty inexpensive and it mixes 1 parts of EcoFlow, 10 parts water. So you get a whole lot out of this for only like $7 or $8. And I've gone ahead and applied it with a sponge to make sure that the leather is nice and wet, and I've given it a couple seconds or a couple minutes to start to dry out. It's still a little damp, and as you can see, it's still a little bit darker than a completely dry sheet of leather, but it's dry enough to go ahead and start tracing my pattern. So what I have here is my TARDIS pattern that I've currently drawn just one side. Okay, I have my pattern all lined up and I made sure that it's at a nice right angle and goes just over the 5-inch mark before it gets to the border. So we have 5 inches of TARDIS, about a 1-inch binding, and then we'll do another 5 inches of TARDIS on the other side. They make a lot of tools for tracing the patterns. This stylus that I have right here that I really like, it's actually just a knitting needle. So knitting needles are great because they come in a ton of different sizes, so you can pick the type that you like and use that to trace your designs. And then I'm just going to use a ruler to follow the lines to make sure that everything is a very perfectly straight line. One of the things I love about the TARDIS design is it's very geometrical, so it's just a series of straight lines, making sure everything stays at nice tight right angles and parallel to each other. Okay, I've done all of my horizontal lines, so now I'll go ahead and just do all of my vertical lines. Of course, it doesn't matter which ones you do first. I usually just start from one side and just keep working my way to the other side. So I'll go ahead and finish these, flip my design, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I have this side all traced out. And I didn't do the binding yet. I always do that last, that way I can make sure that if there's any mistakes or I need to bring one out further than the other, I can do the binding last and make it thicker or thinner as needed. So now I'm going to flip the book, line up my pattern again, and I just want to make sure that my lines go straight across. So the top of every window lines up with the other side, and the top of every door frame lines up with the other side. That way my ruler can just go straight across and have one straight line. So I'm going to get those lined up, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing from this side, tracing from edge to edge to get all of these traced out and making sure that it's symmetrical. So see you in a couple minutes when that's done. Okay, so I finished drawing out the Doctor Who TARDIS on both sides and my binding, and there may be places where you've traced and you went over the line or you didn't trace it perfectly. That's okay, because the lines that you traced will go away when you dye it. So they're not traced deep enough, so that won't be a problem. It's when you cut that you have to be careful, because if you do cut over the line or you cut wrong, then you're going to have to turn that into a happy accident and figure out a way to get creative and make that look like you wanted it there. So what I'm going to do is just now go over those lines with my cutting tool. So because I want it to be symmetrical, on some places I'm not necessarily going to be cutting directly on my line that I traced, because I want the line to go all the way across. One mistake that I've done is due to not paying attention to what I was doing. I've accidentally cut all the way from one end to the other and cut straight across the book binding portion. So with that, it wasn't a complete disaster. I was able to hide the bindings of the book into it, but it definitely wasn't my original design or intent. It's also good to make sure that your swivel knife has a nice sharp blade on it. And you definitely want to make sure your leather is pretty dry. You don't want to really cut wet leather, because what I've noticed, especially if the blade isn't extremely sharp, is you end up just pushing into the leather more than slicing through it. When it's starting to dry out a little bit, that's when it cuts really easily. And that's where we really see the benefits of this EcoFlow Easy Carve, because that's really helping the blade cut through the leather nicely without getting any drag or tearing. And I always try to angle my blade so it's using kind of straight up and down, using the point more so than the rest of the blade. I honestly can't tell you if that's the right way or not, but the reason that this is called Crafting the Madam K Way is I taught myself leather. I don't know if I'm doing things right, but they turn out the way I want them to turn out, so that's good enough for me. A little background to that, I just started doing leather craft about a year ago. I did not think that I would be capable of doing leather craft, and I realized that there was a Tandy Leather by me. I walked in the store, talked to the guy at Tandy Leather for about an hour, and I walked out feeling like an absolute pro. And I've just been watching YouTube videos and going to Tandy Leather basically every Saturday and learning new techniques. And I think at this point I'm getting pretty good at it. I've had a lot of compliments for people saying, you know, for only doing this for a year, my leather designs look pretty good. So same as the way I carved it. I did all of my horizontal. Now I'm going to go ahead and just start from right to left and do all of my vertical. Being careful to make sure that the lines are straight 90-degree angles. Because at this point, again, those mistakes are very hard to correct or fix. If your line waves just a little bit or goes a little bit off, you can kind of fix it with the way that we're going to do the stamping to hide it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish carving this up. We'll be back for the next step in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I have my lines all cut out. What I like to do now at this point is just sort of go through and clean up some of my corners, because you can see here they don't exactly meet, here they don't exactly meet either, and in order for it to stamp really nicely, we really want that to completely touch and form a complete corner with no gaps. So I'll just go through drawing my knife from the horizontal line or from perpendicular to the line that it's running to. I don't know if that logic made any sense, but that way I don't accidentally cut over my line I'm running into the continuous line. And like I said, if you made small mistakes, those can be hidden with the stamping. Like here, the cuts just barely go over the line, but when I stamp out this line, you're not even going to be able to notice that. The stamps that I use, I like to use a combination of, this is the B200 craft tool. I think the glare is probably not going to let you see that, but and then this one is B197. This is a little more square, and it has a little less of a bevel on it. It's not completely flat. That's a good angle here. You can see there's a little bit of a bevel, but not a whole lot. So I used to just use this one, and it gave a really deep bevel, and it was almost too drastic. This gives a little bit less of a bevel and a longer slope, so you can see the windows a little bit better. And my favorite tool is the maul. I used to use a rubber hammer. I tried a different type of mallet, a couple different things, and then my husband got me this for my birthday, and I've been using it ever since. Now see if the leather is still soft enough to stamp. I may not need to wet it again. Okay. There we go. We got a nice slope to that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take that other one and just sort of smooth out my lines by putting the flat part up against the edge. I'm just kind of running it through that. Because this craft tool is a lot better. This was a really cheap one that I got off of eBay or something. Always make sure that the slope points down into your line, and then it's just little tiny taps as you slowly move it. So you're moving the tool slowly and you're tapping rapidly, and kind of use the tapping to help. Most of the time the tapping and the pressure from the mallet is what's slowly moving your hand rather than your hand moving the tool. We'll wet this just a little bit to soften it up just a little bit more. And then another key is I'm using a marble slab. Again, these are also at Tandy Leather too. It makes a huge difference. I really didn't think it was worth it, so it took me almost a year to buy one, and as soon as I bought one and started using it, it made a huge difference. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this out. I want my slopes to go away from the frames of the door, so I'm going to stamp on the outside of the door frame, and then I'm going to stamp on the inside of the window frames to bevel them in. Okay, so I'm on the second half of the book. I got the first one stamped out. And I wasn't going to check back, but I just want to point out a couple things that I do, and I don't know if these tricks would help anyone else. But notice the way I'm holding the craft tool, where I have 4 fingers all on the one side and my pinky right down at the bottom. Because as I'm tapping on it, it always wants to kind of go away from the line. So rather than use my hand to guide it down the row, I use my hand to keep it up against the line. So I'm actually using my pinky to push it that way. That way it stays up against the line. And then my hammer is what pushes it down the line. But really, as little pressure as you can give with this hand, the better, because then you're not going to have like fatigue on long projects. And really letting your wrist do the motions in this, so you don't have pain in your forearm. Like I said, when I used to use a rubber mallet and it was really heavy, my forearm would get really, really tired from doing this over and over again for hours. Okay, I finished stamping out both sides of the full pattern. It's very textured. I used the smaller craft tool for the binding because I wanted more of a deep line as opposed to something that had a long beveled out. So that's why you can see there's a lot more shading in the windows than there are on these pieces here. These are more just deep indented lines where these are really beveled. And now what I'm going to do is shave off the edges to give it just a little bit rounded around the edges and not so square. This tool right here is an awesome tool for beveling the edges, but it's really hard to sharpen. So what I did was I took some just polishing compound, or called jeweler's rouge for sharpening, and I put it on the edge of a piece of leather, and it fits inside that groove perfectly. And then I just kind of drag it across that, keeping it flat because I don't want to round off the edge, and just drag it across that a couple times. That'll sharpen it on the inside. Then I can use the flat part, just drag it a couple times to really get that shine and polish and sharpen the outside. So I'm not going to do this a whole lot because I already did it before, so it should have a nice sharp edge. And I just want to take off a little bit. If you try to take off too much, it will work, but you have more chance to be inconsistent. So I'd rather do 2 passes of a little bit than 1 pass of a lot. There we go. I really try to take my time and pay attention to what's coming off of the book and make sure that it's a consistently thick strip. That's my indicator of whether or not I'm being consistent. If the strip of leather peeling off goes from being really thick to really thin, then you're going to be able to see that in the edge of the book. Okay, so now I have a nice, it's kind of hard to see, but nice beveled edge rather than, you know, a straight edge. Sometimes I'll go through and just sort of clean it up a little bit. I don't think I need to make a second pass. My knife was nice and sharp, so I think I have the consistent bevel that I want. So I'm going to keep it at that.